Well, welcome once again to Calaveras Living. Well, as you know, the drought continues and it's getting more serious, and serious measures are being taken to conserve water and to get people's cooperation. Of course, it's affecting all of us, business people, farmers, ranchers, firemen, everybody. So today we thought we would talk with Joel Metzger, who is the Community Customer Relations Manager for the Calaveras County Water District, and he knows all, and he will tell all. Okay, Joel, it's good to see you.
Hey, I'm glad to be on, John.
Well, it's good, really good to see you. I haven't seen you for a few months.
It's been a little while, and it's gotten a lot hotter and a lot drier since we last crossed paths.
And a lot less water.
A lot less water.
We don't even have any water here to drink.
I know. Wow, what's going on?
Now, why don't we just, this, of course, the CCWD came up with this just a short time ago, right?
Yeah, so just to give people a little history on CCWD, it's the biggest water district in Calaveras County. We have just shy of 13,000 water customers, and so all of those customers will be affected by what are called mandatory Stage 3 restrictions that the 5-member board just passed about a week and a half ago.
Okay, now the 5 members, some are volunteers, or they're all paid, or what?
They're all elected, and they get a very small stipend. One board member recently figured out if you work full-time as a board member, you get about $4 an hour. So it's not much, but we have some very dedicated folks on the board.
Yeah, and some have been there quite a while, huh?
Yeah, I think the longest serving is Jeff Davidson. He's been there for a long time. And then we have some other, Dennis Dooley's been on there for a long time.
Yeah. Bertha Underhill?
Bertha is not on, but she's thinking about running. And we have Don Stump also on the board. We have Bob Dean. He represents kind of up in the West Point, Railroad Flat area. And then our president is Scott Ratterman.
Okay. And who actually heads the board now? Because recently your general manager was let go, right?
That's right. So we now have an interim general manager, and his name is Larry Diamond, and he's also been with the district for a long, long time, and this is, I believe, his 5th time filling that gap between general managers.
Yeah, are you currently looking to recruit someone new from outside or inside?
Well, we've started the recruitment process, and I know that we've already gotten quite a few responses from people who are interested, but I know the board really wants to take their time with this one and make sure that they pick what they refer to as an all-star, because we're looking for someone who's going to spend some time here and invest in the community and be a long-term leader for the district.
Well, it's a real challenging time for CCWD.
It is a challenging time, and I know that these restrictions can be difficult for people. But I will say this, the restrictions that we have implemented are not as severe as what the state could have forced us to implement. And the scary part is, John, we don't know what's going to happen as we move farther into the summer. Because if you think about it, we're in June right now still.
Sure, we don't know how much rain we're going to get or anything.
We don't know how much rain we're going to get, but what we do know is probably going to be another hot, dry summer, and the water is just going to get more and more scarce. And what the state's probably going to do is reevaluate on a monthly basis, and they may send us out even more stringent requirements.
Yeah.
Let me tell you about the ones that we have going. The stage 3 restrictions that our board passed are in response to what's called a curtailment order. And that was sent out to Calaveras County Water District, along with a bunch of other water districts all across the Central Valley and in the foothills surrounding it, in the Sacramento watershed and the San Joaquin River watershed. And what this curtailment notice said, and it came from the State Water Resources Control Board.
This is all legal, of course.
This is all state law.
Can
basically.
Be done.
Yeah. And they said, you no longer have the right to divert water for anything other than health and human safety purposes.
Okay.
So what we do, like on the Stanislaus River, is we store water in a reservoir called Spicer, way up in the high country. And that perfects our water rights, and we're allowed to divert that downstream because we've stored it, and it's pretty much for our use now. Then downstream we divert it, and we pump it through a big tunnel, and then we take it out, and we treat that water, and we distribute it all up and down the Highway 4 corridor. So what the state basically said was, you don't get to take any water out of the Stanislaus anymore unless it's for the purpose of health and human safety. So that's pretty much keeping you and me alive, drinking and using our toilets.
That's a start.
So, I mean, that's pretty strict. That's no outdoor watering. That's no nothing. And so the state said you can respond to us and you can say, well, we'd like to do this instead of completely shutting everything down except for, just health and human safety.
Yeah.
So we analyzed everything, and we made sure to point out that we had stored many thousands of acre feet of water, and water's measured in acre feet, which means an acre covered with 1 foot of water. So it's a lot of water. So Spicer still has like 100,000 acre feet plus in it, way more than we would ever use, and that had all been stored prior to the curtailment notice. So we technically, by the letter of the law, could use all of that stored water and it wouldn't be subject to the curtailment notice. We could still use that because it was stored prior. But we want to be team players, and we wanted to show a good faith effort. So anyway, we have stages 1 through 4 in our urban water management plan. And stage 1 is basically just limited conservation. Stage 2 is a little bit more, still both voluntary. Stage 3 is what we went with, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. Stage 4 is no outdoor watering and significant mandatory reductions, and we haven't gotten there yet. We are at stage 3. So keep your eyes out, everyone, for this flyer. This is going to be posted all over the county.
Mandatory stage 3 water conservation.
Yep, and on here, I'll give you the basics for what a resident needs to be aware of. And remember, these are only CCWD customers.
Okay, now these are going to be posted all around the county?
Yeah, you should see these all over the place where we serve water customers. So you can't water between 10 a.m. and 6 p.m., the hottest part of the day. We don't want people watering outside because you lose a lot to evaporation.
Just to evaporate, sure.
So we want you to be careful about that. In addition, you can only water every other day, and the way we've assigned these watering days is if you have an odd numbered address, you can water on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. And if you have an even numbered address, you can water on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. No watering on Sundays, period.
And don't water sidewalks.
Yeah, that's right. Don't. It's called hardscape.
Yeah.
You can't even wash your car according to this. You can't wash your sidewalk down, your driveway, anything that you could sweep off with a broom. Just use the broom right now. We're trying to avoid those things. If you have a pool that you haven't filled up yet, you're not allowed to fill your pool up. If you have already filled up the pool, that's a different story. We're not going to have you drain it or anything. The water's been used.
Yeah.
Hot tubs, can't fill those up. You can't. Oh, golf courses. That's another big one that people are concerned about.
It takes a lot of water.
A lot of water. So you see all these greens. So we have 2 different restrictions for golf courses. If you use treated water, that's sewage that's been treated and brought back to a clean standard, if you use that to water your greens, you can continue using that. The state likes to see this treated effluent used. However, if you use raw water, which means pumped out of the stream and going right to the golf course.
Good water.
Good water. You are cut back to only watering your greens and your tee boxes, and all the fairways basically aren't going to get any water based on that. So that's a big one. Also, for commercial landscape, you need to cut that water back by 35%. So like homeowners associations and big business parks and things like that, where you have a bunch of landscaping, 35% mandatory reduction on that.
Wow. So, as you say, these aren't as strict as they could be, though.
They aren't as strict as they could be at all. If we went to stage 4, you'd be seeing maybe the entire golf course die. We wouldn't be able to let you water every other day. You'd have to completely cut off your outdoor watering. But I want people to know, I am a gardener. I have an orchard. I grew up on a farm. I'm going to do everything I can, and I know the board of directors and our interim GM are going to do everything they can to protect the right to use the water that we have flowing through our streams. And we do have a lot of water flowing through our streams. In fact, the ironic part is there's more water than we could ever use, even in this severe time of drought, flowing down through our rivers. But what the state has said is you need to save that water for other people. And that's where water rights come in. I wanted to tell our viewers about water rights.
Yeah, I don't think they understand water rights.
It's kind of a weird thing, they're very complicated, but I'm just going to give you the simple version.
Okay.
So let's just say
Good. You know hosts.
So there are 3 main types. The most powerful right is called a riparian right. And a riparian water right belongs to someone who owns a piece of property that is immediately adjacent to a stream or a spring or river. If you do have land that goes down right to the shore, then when the stream is flowing naturally, so not dam release, but a natural flow, you have a right to take enough water to sprinkle your garden and your lawn. It's called a reasonable use. That's a very strong water right. The next most powerful one is called a senior water right. That is someone who was able to get a legal water right before the year 1914. And the year 1914 is when the state of California kind of got serious about water rights and really started getting everything organized and distributing all the water that was left. But a lot of people had already taken some pretty big chunks of that water. So they're called the pre-1914. That's a very senior right. And just so people know, as of this date of this interview, the state has not sent curtailment notices to anyone with pre-1914 rights. Then we have junior water rights, which are anyone who is post-1914. And unfortunately for CCWD, 90+% of our water rights are post-1914. So we're junior water right holders, which is why we were the first to get the curtailment notice, because the way the legal system works in California for water is those with the most senior rights, they get their full amount of water until everyone else has been cut back. And if everyone else has nothing, then only then they get cut back. Yeah.
So that's a nice explanation of water rights. Now, this whole thing that CCWD's trying to do, they're trying to get people's cooperation right, because you do have legal measures that you can use to enforce some of these, right?
That's right. And, you know, just before we even go into the possible punishments, if you don't adhere to these policies, I want people to be clear. None of us want to go out there and be water police and water cops, and we're not looking to bang on people's doors and say that they had been watering on the wrong day. We're looking for voluntary cooperation and for people to be team players.
You don't even have the personnel to enforce something like that anyway.
We would probably have to hire an entire force of water cops if that's what you know the state was having us do. But again, if people can remember that this is not something CCWD came up with and decided to impose.
It comes down from the state.
It's the state. And so, you know, if someone's upset by having to conserve, I understand those you know, inconveniences and seeing your plants die potentially and all that. But this is something the state's forcing us to do. And before I go into what we can do to enforce this, let me tell you that the state can also bring out their teeth if we don't comply with their order. They can fine us up to $10,000 a day if we continue diverting water for purposes other than health and human safety. And so the district could face serious fines that we really don't have the money to pay at this point. Now, we did put out stage 3 restrictions. If someone just says, you know what, I don't care what you say, CCWD, I'm not doing it.
Well, there's always a few of those.
And there are always a few of those. The first thing that's going to happen is me or one of my team members will compose a letter and very clearly lay out the fact that stage 3 restrictions are in place. Maybe someone didn't hear about it. And as much as I've tried to get this word out, it may be they didn't hear about it. So it's just going to be a letter saying, this is what happened. This are the restrictions you need to abide by, and we'd appreciate your cooperation. Now, if that waste of water continues, then another letter would go out that would say, if you do not cooperate, then we're going to have to utilize one of these 3 options, or 2 options at this point. First, it's the letter. Then it's what's called a flow restrictor. We actually go into the connection between our big main line and the house, or business, or whatever it is.
You can actually restrict the flow.
And we can tighten that line down. So most people have like a 5/8 inch water line, or maybe up to an inch. And we can tighten that down to much smaller, and so not much water can get through there, and it's kind of like a forced conservation. Now, if someone goes in and rips that out and puts the full one back in, or whatever they might want to do, eventually we can take legal action. And it's a violation of the water code to continue wasting water in time of emergency, time of drought. And so if you are convicted of a misdemeanor of this violation, you could be imprisoned in jail for up to 30 days, or you could face up to a $600 fine, or both.
Or both.
Or both. But again, that's not the direction.
That's the extreme.
That's the extreme. That would be for someone who really was not cooperating after every effort had been made.
You might reap kind of remind those people too, if they go to prison, they won't get a lot of water.
Probably not. They think this rationing is
Not in
bad.
California. So what tips would you have? I hope we've covered all the restrictions pretty well, have we?
I think that we have gone through the majority
Or
of
what
the
can be done to
restrictions.
enforce and get people's cooperation. But it is a thing that's supposed to be, for you folks out there, cooperative. You should think about it and get to it as soon as you can. Where can I cut back and still, for health and safety, still lead a good life? But what tips would you have for people to voluntarily cooperate and conserve water?
I have a bunch.
Okay.
And I want to go over, there's one thing I wanted to point people to before we leave restrictions, though. If they want to read the curtailment order from the state, if they want to read the resolution language that our board passed, and if they want to read a summarized version of what happened, they can go to www.ccwd.org.
Okay.
Or our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/Calaveras Water District. And all this stuff will be up on those places, just in case they haven't
that
seen
folder
it.
too? Or that
This flyer will be up there. And a bunch of, the governor has also put some orders out. They can read those too.
Okay.
But conservation, that's a big part of this. We're not just restricting your water. We're trying to tell you easy ways that you can cut down. And it's really amazing how easy it is to cut down.
Let me ask you one thing too. It just occurred to me. Some people who are on wells.
Yeah.
I mean, they should really get into this too, because the whole water level is depleted by people who are overusing their wells.
That is such an interesting point that you brought up, because in Sacramento right now, the legislator is looking into, are we going to start restricting groundwater? So for those who don't know, surface water is, it snows up in the Sierra and it starts melting, and then it runs down over the surface of the ground, and it goes into rivers and then reservoirs and eventually out into the San Francisco Bay and into the ocean.
Yeah.
Groundwater is what surface water percolates down into the ground and either travels through what's called fractured rock, which up in our area, most wells are going into fractured rock, so these little underground streams.
Yeah.
But then when you get down into the valleys, you have what's called an aquifer, which is basically a big, huge bed of gravel that's filled with water. And it can be, 10 feet deep, or it can be a couple 100 feet deep.
Yeah.
And many of the farmers down in the valley are pumping groundwater out, and they're watering their crops, and then they're supplementing with surface water. Anyway, we have a lot of wells in fractured rock up here.
Yeah.
None of those wells are regulated or curtailed by the state. In fact, the state doesn't have the power to do that right now.
Yeah, they don't even have a record of most of them.
No, there's nothing that they can do to stop people from using well water. But the problem is, a lot of these wells are going dry right now.
Yeah.
So people are having to bore a couple 100 feet deeper to try to get the water, or they're just getting like a couple gallons per minute instead of maybe 10, 15, or 100 that they used to get. So they have to put in these big storage tanks, and then the well just runs and fills the storage tank up, and then when they need the water, it's there for them.
Yeah.
But you're right. When you use that water, when you have enough holes, enough straws in that cup,
Just depletes it.
it goes down. And these aquifer levels have gone down, 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 and the fractured rocks they're just not populated the way they usually would be. But no restrictions on them right now. I certainly encourage people to do whatever they can to conserve.
Oh, yeah. Now, getting back to more tips for conservation, what else?
Well, I wanted to give you some numbers. So, according to our calculations, and this is what we base our rates on, the average family, the single-family dwelling, uses 195 gallons a day of
Family
water.
of four?
I think it's not an exact round
okay.
number. It's
Just
somewhere
a
between, I
typical
think,
family.
3 point something.
Okay.
The average toilet flush is 3.5 gallons of water. The average conventional shower head flows at 5 gallons per minute, and the list goes on. Now, there are things called low-flow toilets.
Sure. And shower heads.
And there are low-flow shower heads, or now they have these shower heads that you can flick off and on without turning the whole thing off, and the big handle, just so you can kind of soap your hair up and then flick it back on and wash it off, and then things like that. So I'll talk about toilets first, just because toilets happen to be the easiest way to conserve the biggest amount of water in a household. They're flushed a lot. People tend to flush after any business that they do, and one thing that we encourage people to do is, if it's yellow, it's mellow. Leave
Yeah.
it be until, maybe you have some other business to do and then you're going to flush it all down together. That'll save a lot.
Leave the important things to the flushing.
That's right.
Okay.
And then another thing is installing a low flow toilet can get that 3.5 gallons down to like 1.2 gallons.
Oh,
So
that's quite a change.
you can cut it in half,
Yeah.
more than half right there. And we are offering a rebate, $25 per toilet, up to 2 toilets. If you give us the receipt for a low flow toilet and you install that in your house, and we'll help you out with that.
Oh, that's a good idea.
And we picked the toilets because that's the biggest way you can conserve the fastest. We may also, and I know the board is open to considering some other rebate programs. So we might look into things like automatic timers, because that can save a lot if
Yeah.
you aren't trying to do everything by hand and forgetting that your water's on. We might also look into those shower heads, which you can flick on and off, or that just are lower flow shower heads. So anyway, that right there, just with toilet showers and doing things like if you're shaving, turn the water off between your rinses of your razor.
Yeah.
Those little things. If you're washing your face, turn it off when you can.
I recommend electrics.
Electric shaver, then
Sure.
you're
Don't
completely
use any water.
in the clear. On your kitchen sink, and we're kind of talking indoors now.
Yeah.
On your kitchen sink, you can put an aerator on,
Yeah.
and that will reduce the flow by a significant percentage. And so I encourage anyone to get an aerator and put that on their sink.
Yeah.
Some people are plumbing gray water out into a holding tank, and gray water is kind of like when you wash your dishes and stuff, it can go into a holding tank and things like that. When you wash your hands or you shave, that can go to gray water, and people are using that for watering their plants and so on and so forth. Other people are collecting rainwater. So instead of the gutter going into the
If it
storm
rains.
drain, yeah. So we're a little late on the roof rainwater.
Yeah.
But that's a good way.
Bring the weatherman in here.
Yeah, we might need some summer
No, but
storms.
that's a good idea.
Yeah, so collecting rainwater is a big one. Washing machines are another big one.
There's some take abundance of water and some don't.
That's right.
Yeah.
So what's called a front loader, where the door opens out instead of up,
Uh-huh.
that is significantly more efficient with water. And then another thing is, let's say you have your favorite T-shirt and you really want to wear it, but you just wore it yesterday. Some people might do a whole load of laundry just to do that T-shirt.
Yeah, no, so
or
do
maybe
a
some
whole
socks
load
in
then,
there.
huh?
Make sure that load is full before you do
Yeah.
it, and just minimize the number of loads. The pipes connecting the back of your washer to the wall, one, they could be leaking, and two, sometimes they pop off completely, and that will flood your house.
Yeah.
So that's not necessarily a conservation thing, but I just want to remind people, check those pipes on a regular basis, make sure that they're not getting stale and might break, make sure that they're nice and tight. Another thing is your hot water heater. Just make sure that it's in working order, because that can have some big effects on your water use. Now, let me make sure I haven't missed any indoor.
Well, that's quite a few.
Yeah,
Yeah. Then that would, if people follow that, would be considerable saving.
okay, couple more things for the showers. The average shower time is 10 minutes. So let's say if you're taking a 10-minute shower and you have one of those 5-gallon per minute, that you're using 50 gallons. Well, that's a quarter of your entire day's water use for one shower. If you have 3 people, you're almost going to blow it out of the water there. So you can save quite a bit if you cut that down to 5 minutes.
If you've ever been in the service too, you have to take a 5-minute shower.
5-minute shower?
Yeah, when you're in the service. Get in there, take that shower, get out.
All right, well then I encourage a military mentality on the
right.
showers. Some other people, especially over in Tuolumne County, are putting a bucket down as the water goes from cold to hot. It usually takes maybe 20, 30 seconds. Yeah. You can save that water, and then you can take it out and you can water plants with it that way.
Good idea.
That's a real common one. Aerators on all the faucets. Get a low-flow toilet. Another thing is, a lot of people tend to use the toilet as a wastebasket. Blow your nose, throw it in the toilet, flush it. Don't do that.
No.
Throw it into the toilet. Anything that you don't have to flush, you don't want to flush. You can plug your sink instead of running the water to rinse your razor. So that's another thing. Instead of just turning it off and on, plug it, get a little bit, and then do your shaving. Or get the electric razor, like you said. When you wash your hands, get them wet, turn it off, lather up, turn it back on, rinse it off, turn it off. That'll save a lot of water that way.
Yeah, running water just...
Running water will kill you. And don't take baths. Baths are killer.
Much more water than showers.
Much more. Go and swim in the rivers. What rivers we have left? That'd be a good one.
Right.
But so the interesting thing is, in most counties, indoor use is way more than outdoor use.
Yeah.
However, in Calaveras County, it's the opposite because we tend to have larger acreages.
Oh, yeah.
And people like to have gardens and big lawns.
Orchards, farmers. Yeah.
Orchards, all kinds of stuff. And so what ends up happening is here the majority of water is used outside a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So that's really where you can cut down even more than all these indoor things that we just talked about. I think one of the biggest use of water is lawns. And just to give you the history of lawns, they got going in England many hundreds of years ago, and they would put lawns around castles. They would clear the forest, they would put lawns there, and that would allow them to see oncoming enemies so they had some warning.
Yeah.
If you have the forest right up to your castle wall, people can sneak up on you. So lawns became associated with a big castle. Then the royalty thought, well, I'm going to put that around my palace as well because this is a big, beautiful thing. But it was a very expensive thing to do. Not many people could do it. So then lawns became associated with royalty. In most of the world, lawns are not a very common thing to have.
Beautiful rock garden.
Plenty of rock garden, all that stuff. But somehow, kind of in the mid-1900s, 1950s, 60s, as the subdivision started becoming built here, as World War II vets came back, lawns started popping up everywhere, and it became like this American tradition, and now people take great pride in their lawns. But this is atypical. Most people don't have enough water, enough fresh water to have these giant lawns.
Some people aren't young enough to work out in the yard, too.
That's right.
So, I mean,
That's
I'm
right.
one of them.
Then you have to pay someone to take care of it for you. So I guess I would like to encourage people to start changing their thinking when it comes to lawns. And I have a lawn right now, so I don't want to be a hypocrite here. I'm going to have to let go of that at some point, too. And
But you're royalty.
Maybe, yeah, I feel royal.
No, but that's really a good point. Anything, too, just in closing, that we haven't covered that would be important to people out there? I mean, the conservation things are very good. The restrictions, everything's clear in what you're trying to do.
Just don't waste water, and don't water unless you have to. Do the every other day thing. And I so appreciate people's willingness to help. And I've gotten lots of smiles, and whatever can I do? We're all a team here as a state, as a county, as a water district. So I really appreciate that. And for more info, go to ccwd.org or call us directly at 754-3543.
Okay, and when's the last time you had a shower?
This morning.
Okay. Now, don't take it till, let's see, what's the date?
I don't advocate for the once-a-week shower policy.
Okay.
Some people have suggested that. We're not quite there yet.
People avoid you at work.
Yeah, we can have some divorces over that. We don't need that.
Okay. Boy, it's good to see Joel Metzger. And all this is, we kid and we have a good time, but this is a very important concern for the whole area. So, listen to what he says, take his advice, look for the flyers, and do what you can to help out because we don't know when rain is coming. Joel, thanks a lot.
My pleasure.
We'll see you next time.